Alright, so I just want to go over the plan here. We're going to take this burnt 89 RS, and actually, as ugly as it looks, this fender didn't get a whole lot of damage, and the other fenders on the roof, and it didn't get a whole lot of damage either. So we got a little bit of burn up here on the roof, and we've got a blown out windshield. Our dash is melted. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to replace the hood. I've got a white hood that I'm going to put on here. I'll mount that fender right back here, and so there's going to be a bit of a burn patch right here. So the plan is going to be to integrate the white into the top of this fender here, and then possibly, you know, the top of the fender here, and then run up onto the roof, basically addressing the rust issue that we've got here, and then painting a checkered flag that'll appear to be somewhat draped over the top of the car, just to mask those burned areas. Okay, the engine compartment is a complete disaster. Everything in here has got to be replaced. The radiator support has already been cut out. I'm going to pull the existing engine and transmission and everything else off of here. Now, incidentally, the complete front inner structure of this thing unbolts. It's actually bolted on all the way around, and there is, right up in here, there's something that has to be cut. I guess this apron extension or whatever here, and it's only on the right side for some reason. But anyway, so the plan is I'm going to remove the complete front inner structure so that this thing will be literally a cab with a firewall. That way we're really only working with the burned rusty area right here. And you've got to remember, this is going to be a race car, so we're not going to have a lot of this stuff that you see in here. I mean, we're going to need brakes, and the wiring loom is going to need to be replaced, but the idea is going to be to get this completely gutted and then shoot some OSFO on there to neutralize that rust. We'll put a little primer on it, and we're going to shoot the firewall white, and then I'm going to pull the complete front inner structure off of another Trooper, and we'll get it all stripped down, and again we'll get it shot white. Now, while we're doing all that, I want to get as creative as possible, and I'd like to have this front inner structure be completely removable. Let's say that during the race we have an engine failure or something to that effect. I'd like to be able to just hit a few bolts, you know, along the top of the fender, you know, and along this apron here, and go ahead and just pull the whole front end off in case we need to pull the engine and tranny out in the middle of a race. The interior is as you would expect. It's completely burned out. You know, we won't be needing any of the trim or any of that, so this is basically going to be more of a pressure wash and clean out. The dashboard is kind of interesting, the way that it melted all of the foam and vinyl off of it. So my aim is going to be to get this dash cleaned up, bare metal like that. And I'd like to shoot maybe a wrinkle finish black or something on it, and then go ahead and just mount all the stock gauges right back in here where they belong. Of course, I'll get a steering column to replace this one, and I've got a Momo steering wheel that we'll be putting in here. I'm going to go ahead and get all the pedals, brake master cylinder, the entire wiring loom, and all of that stuff will be replaced. Okay, now for the replacement powertrain, I've got a Camaro 3.4 V6 that has been completely rebuilt, 252 comp cam. As you can see, it's got the pretty painted Fiero valve covers. I've got a aluminum core radiator. We'll mount an electric fan to the front of this thing to kick on in case we need to cool it. I've got an oil cooler, and we'll mate all that to a two-wheel drive 5-speed that I got from Jerry Lamont. Now that's going to be an interesting project as well. What we're going to need to do is take that transmission apart and remove the front section so it can be adapted to the 3.4, which is not a huge deal. The only real issue you run into doing that is that the MUA5 with the 2.6 uses a pilot bearing, and with the 2.8 or say 3.4 it uses a bushing, and this inner diameter is slightly larger than that one. So I'm going to take this pilot bushing right here to my machinist and have him bore that to that size right there. So this is actually going to be a very, very thin pilot bushing that we'll reinstall in the 3.4 so that it'll slip over the input shaft on the transmission that was originally designed for the 2.6. Another thing I'd like to look into is possibly using a 4x4 shifter instead of the big long standard shifter that comes typically on the MUA5. I think a short little throw like that would be cool, and I've got a cool little billet stainless steel shift knob to throw on there. I realize that this is cheating a little bit, but while Ian was here and we pulled the 477s out of this thing, I went ahead and did the big brake upgrade and put the stainless steel brake lines on there because I just didn't see any sense in putting it all back together and then having us take it all back apart later. So there may be a few things to address in there. Obviously we're going to need to replace the shocks, possibly some bushings. I've got a Energy suspension sway bar kit that'll need to be installed here in the front as well. Okay, now this thing's already equipped with the 16-inch snowflakes that we're going to run. Obviously we're going to throw a little lower profile tire on the wheel than these right here. While I had the whole front end torn apart when we were pulling the diffs out and I did the big brake upgrade, I went ahead and cleaned up a pair of manual hubs, and of course there's no guts in these things. This is all for show, but I figured what better way to close up that outer hub bearing than using a 4x4 manual locking hub. Okay, on the rear end we're going to have to install the leaf spring pack that I had originally built and put on the Black Trooper that I started this race car build on, and that'll drop us down several inches right here. I've got an aftermarket rear sway bar kit to install, and when I was pulling the 477s out, I went ahead and installed the 410 limited slip rear differential, so it's ready to go. So that's the general idea. You can see this thing lowered on the ground with a 3.4 Camaro motor and a 5-speed, a gutted interior.